Hey guys, thanks for joining us. I'm here with Pastor Rick, and we're ready to kind of talk about Pastor Kivett's sermon from this past Sunday. But while we're filming this is right around Halloween, so we want to take that into consideration. As we always do, we have an icebreaker question for you and those around you just to have some fun, lighten the mood. And so obviously our question this week is, what is your favorite candy? What's your go-to candy?
Yeah, anytime you have to get this, if there's a bowl of this is what you're going to grab.
Yeah.
Sad to say, there's a couple options on the table. If I had to pick one, this is probably the toughest icebreaker.
Yeah, you can get it down to two.
The toughest icebreaker that we've had to solve or to answer in here is this one. I'm going to have to go with every time, hands down, probably because nobody else likes it. There's so much of it, I can have it. It has to be Almond Joys. Almond Joys are my go-to candy. Nice. Usually, if there's a bowl, these always get picked and left behind. So I just come in and just swoop in like a fat raven and take them all out.
I like Butterfingers.
Oh yeah,
Butterfingers are go-to. Like I like Reese's, but whenever we go to the movies and stuff, like the Butterfinger. And I don't know, do you like Butterfingers?
Yeah, pretty good.
So I don't know if you've realized recently there's been like a flavor change.
I don't like them as much as you do, obviously.
All right. Yeah. Listen, if you're watching and you are a fellow Butterfinger aficionado, couldn't even think of it, could you?
So,
I was afraid.
Before we do this, what's the Butterfinger flavor? What has it changed?
I don't know. There's something about like the chocolate. I don't know if it's a change in the flavor or just the amount or my mind.
Probably.
But I feel like there was one box that I saw that it was like new flavor, which you know isn't good.
You may have eaten a box of bad Butterfingers.
It could have been. Got this stash.
They're out of
town.
town. But 2016, still good.
Still good. Oh, man.
Well, take this time right now with your group and talk about what is your favorite, what is your go-to candy, and maybe discuss how candies change when the expiration date goes out. All right, well, this week, Pastor Kivett, we left our typical Ephesians series, Death to Life, to spend some time focusing on, with the things coming up this week. And if you're watching this video, we have probably here in the United States already had our election, but we are preparing for that. And everybody has made the statement, and I've seen this on several different political ads, this year's election is the most, I guess I would say, is the most important in recent history. But the funny thing is, we said that every 4 years up to this point, which we're not trying to downplay that, but we are in that election cycle. And Pastor Kivett wanted to talk about from Matthew chapter 6 about where Jesus says, "Your will be done, Father, on earth as is in heaven." And what does it look like for a Christian to vote? And I have to say, it was probably one of my favorite Kivett sermons.
Yeah.
It was really well done, and it was convicting and enlightening all at the same time. So I was really proud of that. And so he talked about politics. And he said one of the things that politics does is that it naturally divides us. And he asked us to come on stage. We both held different signs. And we talked about how once you know a person votes a certain way, it kind of labels them. Yeah. And so the question is, what is it about politics that naturally divides us like that? Because, I mean, we like sports. You're a Duke fan. Yeah. I don't care. But you and Carolina fans, I still see you hang out and get along. Yeah. You don't try to cancel them. Yeah. So what is it just about politics that divides us so much?
You know, and that's an interesting thing too, because it does, and we were talking about this a little bit, because you're more experienced than I am.
Older?
No, more experienced.
Oh, okay.
It's the nicer way.
Got it.
But I mean, in years past, even with elections, it doesn't seem like there's been this vitriol between the differing views. And it seems like there's definitely a heightened sense of that, whether that is just the kind of the climate that we're in right now, socially, with everything going on, the context of how everything else has gone on this year and other issues that have been brought up. Yeah. Or if it's even just with the development of social media and so many people having even louder voices than they usually do, where that may have already been there, but now it's for the whole world to see. And so there's a lot of dynamics there, but I think really what it does is it speaks to the desires of our heart. We have our preferences, and in our heart of hearts, we believe we are absolutely right, and everyone else should see why we are right. And so it comes back to a little bit of what we talked last week. It's okay to have personal preferences, but when you push those on someone else, they're no longer personal.
Right.
They're no longer personal preferences. And so, so even in this, I believe that's where this really comes from, is everyone should vote this way because this is the way I see it. And I'm right, or else I wouldn't be doing this, or I wouldn't think this way or vote this way. And so that's one of the difficult things is as we think of this, we can often think of, I'm voting for this person for this reason. And many times we have good reasons for that. I'm not doubting that. But at the same time, we have to understand other people voting for someone else also feels the exact same way. And again, going back to what we talked about last week, even that can be two Christians feeling the same way, but voting for different people and having different values. And so the ultimate question is not who's right, but really, what's God's values, and how are we, with ourselves, with the Holy Spirit working in us, and individual convictions there too? How are we doing that without pushing it on someone else?
Yeah, and you mentioned the advent of social media. I think that does play a part of it, especially with the fact that we've had stay-at-home orders. We've been working from home, but we have a lot of that free time where we can look at more of these social medias and find people who agree with us and get really caught up in an echo chamber. Of here's everybody, I'm going to put myself around people I agree with. We're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And anybody who says anything different, you must be crazy. And I think that is part of it. And I've seen this, and I was talking with someone about this week. I think for me, I've been more disenchanted with how Christians are handling each other on social media about this. As you mentioned, you might have two different Christians who are voting differently. And we've said some things online. And I say we as a Christian culture, we've said some things online to our Christian brothers and sisters that after the election, we're going to have a hard time walking back.
Yeah.
And a world is watching, and it saddens me that this is what we've chosen. And Pastor Kivett said something I thought was very powerful in the sermon. He said, what if we championed and proclaimed the coming kingdom of God as much as we proclaim our political side? And I thought, wow, that's convicting. How would the world be different if we championed the right thing?
Yeah. I heard somebody else put it this way of, what if every time you posted to social media, instead you prayed for the people in power and in these seats and positions in our government instead, or prayed for the people, and thinking of that, we love to be able to speak our mind, and with social media, it's so easy where you don't even have to think twice. That's dangerous.
Yeah. We'll take some time now with your group. It's a tough question, talking about what is it about politics that divides us. It may be something different than what Pastor Harper and I shared here in this discussion. It may be something more. You may have some history, some family history. But what is it about politics that divides?
So we kind of alluded to this in our last question, but Pastor Kivett he spoke through these 6 things for Christians to remember as we get into this time and thinking of politics and everything going on in our world right now. But also, he talked specifically about some political traps that we can easily fall into, these mindsets. And so we want to kind of dive into what those are. What are some of those political traps we often find ourselves in?
Yeah, and this comes from, I believe it's J.D. Greear who put these political traps out there. Pastor Kivett was alluding to some of these, and he gave, J.D. gives 4. The first one is, politics are of first importance, that there is nothing more important than politics. The second one is the opposite. Politics are not important to the Christian whatsoever. He doesn't need to care about this. She doesn't need to worry about these things. And then the other 2 are really kind of quotations that people would have. Number 3 would be, I have all the political answers. Just ask me. I'll give them to you. And then the other one has to do with the idea, the belief that God is on my political side, which is where you hear a lot on, I'm going to use a phrase, or Twitter or whatever social media, is that if you're a Christian, you are going to vote this way, and there should not even be a question about it. Yeah. And without naming names, we've seen it this week. It just seems like over the past few weeks, you've had famous or well-known pastors and educators in Christian work that have made statements on both sides. and reading all the sides, because that's what you want to do to be a good researcher,
Right.
listen to everybody's argument. They're very convincing. And so the question that is being asked is like, what are these political traps?
Yeah.
It could be more than these. It could be the things that we just kind of say, this is where I'm on it, this is where I'm standing. And if you don't agree to this, you're not on my team. Of those four, the one that I'm probably most tricky to fall into would be the number 3. I have all the answers. Do the idea that I'm like, well, I've done this, I've read this, and I can get arrogant about it. I read this guy's blog. This has to be the right thing, or I read this website that And if you're not careful, you can start pushing that out there, and sound more like a conspiracy theorist and less like an informed believer. And so I think I have to be on guard about that.
So for me, out of those, just kind of those 4 as a template, mine would definitely be more so of the leaning towards politics aren't that important. So almost maybe a stupid faith, maybe a dumb faith, I don't know, where it's just we know that God's in control, and so therefore then, okay, this doesn't, not that, okay, we're not going to vote then, we're not going to do our part, but also, okay. So typically where I can find myself is I'm not going to say what I think often. I'm not going to really speak up and get into a debate over Thanksgiving dinner or something with somebody who has a different, okay, that's fine, whatever, man, I don't care.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something where it can almost become an apathetic thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to stray too far where it's all it is politics, right. But then also where you fall back and you're not doing your due diligence as a citizen, as a good citizen. And that's what we've talked about. How do you do that? So you are informed, you know what's going on, and you do your part. And so there is a healthy balance there. But for me, that's kind of where I can easily fall into more.
And I think if we're, like, as you said that, I was thinking, some people would hear that and go, well, here's a person, he says he doesn't care. Is he trying to be sanctimonious? That kind of thing. So, and I don't think that. I'm saying there's a lot of times there we are, there's our trap.
Yeah.
I think maybe an unsaid trap would be those who don't agree with me are the bad guys, and I'm the only one on the good side.
Yeah.
And we have to be very careful that we don't vilify people who think differently, even if they are not as concerned about it as we are.
Right.
They might, we might say, well, you're part of the problem. Well, not really. I just think we're just too quick to label and fight over it.
Well, take some time right now. Maybe you can think of some additional traps or other traps that we fall into with this, but take some time and talk about this with your group.
Okay, our final question that we want to talk about today is building off the challenge that Pastor Kivett gave us as he shared with us that we were both on stage, and he said, all right, guys, put down your signs. And we put our signs down. He said, okay, now see the other person, not as how they vote, but who they are. Either they're the person who does not know Christ and is on their way to a Christless eternity, or they do know Christ and we're going to be with them forever in eternity in the kingdom. And so the question then becomes, what can we do? What is a concrete action step that we can take to see people differently or to see people beyond the way they vote?
Yeah, so you say concrete, and I don't know how concrete this is, but I think it's practical.
It can be gravel.
It may be.
That's good.
Maybe wet cement. I don't know.
Sure.
But I think of taking a posture of humility. Whereas we were talking, again, one of those easy things is, I'm right. I've got all the right answers. God's on my side. Like, really? Mm-hmm. So taking this posture of humility and admitting, I may be wrong. There's a chance I'm wrong. There's a chance that I'm not right. And so being able to say, okay, yeah, if I go look at reasons so-and-so is the correct candidate, I'm going to find plenty of information for that. So you can find whatever research and data you want to back up whatever point you want to make. That's not difficult at all. You can rally people around you like we were talking about. But being able to take a place of humility and posture yourself and think, okay, maybe there is another side here that's valid. Instead of what we do is demonize this other view to where, they don't even know how to tie their shoes. They don't know how to do anything. They don't. Yeah. And it's much like, I hope this isn't too far of a jump here. But it's like when you're driving in a car. There's a reason you're more aggressive in a car than when you are in person walking through a store. Even when you're in a store, if you have a buggy, people are more aggressive because you have a buggy in front of you than when you're walking with that. Like, this is what studies have shown. Like, and so what's interesting is you get mad at somebody in a car because you don't see them, you see the car. But when you see them face to face, suddenly it changes. It changes. And so there's something about seeing someone different than you, vote different, or believe different than you, and you see them as a human created by God instead of just a blank supporter.
Yeah.
Whoever supporter or whoever thinks this way or whoever, whenever you think of them in that way, it changes your mindset and it changes how you treat them. And I think that's a big step.
Yeah. And I would build on that with my answer would be listening more than talking. We could see that in recent debates where you had the first debate was just a lot of yelling at each other, nobody really listening and giving room. Which when I went back to my classes, like, guys, listen, whoever you vote for or whatever you decide, we didn't see civility in any way there. So I think listening more than talking because, for example, someone might differ the way you vote, but they have a reason for the way they vote. My grandfather, who's long since gone to be with the Lord, was a lifelong Democrat because of FDR. His idea, because he grew up in that time, and his idea, FDR, saved the nation with the New Deal. Now, we might have some people listening to this going, no, he didn't, but that's where my grandfather was. And so my grandfather loved Jesus. My grandfather loved people, and all the social issues, my grandfather would be more on I guess you'd say, a conservative line, but he just couldn't bring himself to vote for anybody but the party that brought us FDR.
Right.
So I think seeing people and hearing reasons, hearing their heart is a whole lot better than looking at poll numbers and saying, okay, I see you less as a statistic and more as a human.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, and I think that's missing, and I think that's an answer to a lot of issues, is listening more than talking. Speaking where you have to.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not just saying tolerate everything, but listening more than talking. We'll take some time now with your group and discuss this idea about some concrete steps you can, and as a group that you can, go beyond seeing people as how they vote and more of the person that they are, the person that Christ made them to be. Well, that's been another episode of The Pursuit. As always, we hope you're watching these with groups. You can always watch older episodes of The Pursuit, previous episodes, by clicking the link on your screen.
Yeah, you can also go back. If you missed this last sermon, I would highly recommend go back and watch this one specifically on Matthew chapter 6 and breaking away from our Ephesians series. But you can also go back and watch previous sermons, others that aren't in series or even those that are in Ephesians. You can find those. Subscribe so that you get notified as soon as we add videos so you don't miss anything. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.